Morning, Trainiacs. Training is underway for the assault on trying to get to Kona 2020, 2021, something like that. And we are starting off with a little bit of testing on the bike and the run. And this is testing that you can do yourself to help monitor where you're at in the progress of your fitness journey. Are you getting fitter? Are you getting faster? Are things feeling easier? And we're going to do that with very measurable tests that you can use at home without spending any money. Fortunately, it's not even gonna hurt. All right, so some of you might be familiar with MAF method training, and that is a method of training that you can download. You can get your individual MAF heart rate, MAF heart rate, by going to triathlontaren.com/HR training, by just answering 4 simple questions. You can get your unique heart rate that is the heart rate ceiling that you should do the majority of your training under. That's your MAF heart rate. Then what you do is you do a measured amount of time on the bike and a measured amount of distance on the run, and you do those times and distances at that MAF heart rate. And if you can, bike longer in the amount of time that you spend on the bike, or you can run in a shorter amount of time for the measured distance, and you check this every few months, you are getting faster. Let's start it. I'll explain more. All right, so what you're gonna do is you want to do a 30-minute ride in a controlled scenario like Zwift or whatever training app you're gonna use. And you wanna do that in a way that is not super variable. So if you're going on Zwift, pick a flat course like the Fuego Flats. The desert course here is just fine for that. And what you wanna do is have a very easy to execute way of doing this, like an easy to execute, repeatable series of steps. So I wrote down before I did this that I'm doing it in the early afternoon. I wrote down what I had before. I wrote down that I'm wearing a shirt, that I'm wearing a hat. I wrote down what the temperature is set to in here. And all of those things are things that could potentially change your heart rate a little bit, so that you know how to replicate this test as close as you can as possible. And you also write down the workout so that you do the same warm-up each time. And what we're gonna do for the warm-up is 5 minutes, just easy spinning, and then 5 minutes, where at the beginning of every minute I'll do a 6-second surge, and then 3 minutes of easy spinning, and then 30 minutes at, in my case, 137 beats per minute. And you see how far on the bike you can go in those 30 minutes. Write that down, and you all of a sudden have yourself a test so that you can go and try it every 3 months and see if you can make it a little bit further with the same heart rate. So let's warm up and we'll see what I got. I tell you, I'm not very fit right now. And there we go, 30 minutes. Hovering around 137 beats a minute. I think I went somewhere around, let's go 6 point, just under 18 kilometers, but average power is what we'll end up looking at. Let's wrap this up with a little cool down spin, and then tomorrow, I'll show you how to do the run test. I'm a fitness mess off season was no joke. I take my off season rest seriously and am paying for it now. All right, so here we are, next day. Now it doesn't have to be next day that you do the run test, but you want to have it tracked, like what order you do things in, if you do the bike first and then the run the next day, or the run first and then the bike the next day, or you have them separated by a few days. But you just want to track that and then replicate it whenever you do this every quarter. Also, the run is a little bit finickier than the bike. I'll explain why. So I'm here at the local university running track. This is the first time I haven't been bowled down by a bunch of sprinting kids while standing in the middle. But the reason that I'm here is because the conditions are always the same, and you can run on the track the same way you run outside. If you don't end up running on a treadmill a lot and then you go and do a treadmill run, you're going to have to be changing your technique, which then isn't quite as applicable as doing it outside, and your heart rate's going to be artificially high. So in my case, I haven't run on the treadmill in like 6 months, so I come here on the track and it's a lot more realistic. Then the thing is, I got to do it on an indoor track every single time. So track is the first best option. The next best option is doing it on a treadmill. But when you do it on a treadmill, you can't really go by the speed of the treadmill, because treadmills are notorious for going out of calibration, in which case you can clip on a foot pod and use the foot pod to determine your pace and your distance, because those are a lot more accurate than anything that's going to be on the treadmill. Like, it's almost more accurate than this in a lot of cases, or the GPS on your phone. And the last most accurate option, the last most ideal option, is an outdoor course. And if you're going to do it on an outdoor course, make sure the conditions are the same when you replicate it, make sure the wind is the same, make sure the course is the same, and ideally not so super hilly. So what I'm gonna do here is same sort of thing as the bike. I'm going to do a warm-up of about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to run 8K at the same MAF heart rate, 137. And we're gonna see how fast I'm able to do that 8K, and we keep track of that. Write all of this stuff down, write down what shoes you've got so that you can use similar shoes, not going from like race flats to trainers. Write down what clothes you're wearing, all of that stuff, so that you can replicate it as close as possible. Giddy up. And that's it. That was very unimpressive what I just did. Been a solid 3 months since I've really focused on anything like heart rate training, fitness related. With the off season, all I've been doing is just kind of training however I felt like. That was slow. It was tremendously slow. I'll explain how slow when we dive into the files. So, Trainiacs, let me dive into the results of those 2 tests and how you can start using those tests. All you need is a heart rate monitor and a piece of paper to write down the results. So let me start with the bike. What I've pulled up here on the right side of the screen is just basically the 30 minutes that I did that heart rate test. That's the main thing that you want to track. You want to track the results of that 30-minute heart rate test. And if you've got a smart trainer that gives you a power reading, that's the way that you want to do it, because it's this nice controlled environment that's easy to replicate over and over. Now, what you want to look at is the average power that you held based on your average heart rate. So I was targeting holding 137. Took me a little while to get up there, so the average over that half hour ends up being 136, and I held 179 watts. Why that is significant is because I can start looking back and saying, all right, well, I wanted to keep my heart rate under 137 beats a minute in Challenge Roth last year, but in that case, I was able to hold 204 watts for 5 hours. Let's take a look at what happened with the run. Even worse disaster. In the case of the run here, what I've pulled up on the right is the period of time that it took me to run 8 kilometers. And I hit the average heart rate bang on. I did 137 beats a minute. And in this case, what you're looking at is how long it takes you to run 8 kilometers and the pace that it takes you to run that. So in this case, it took me a little over 49 minutes and my average pace was 6 minutes and 8 seconds. And I like doing that on the treadmill because 8K is 8K. There's no question about it. There's no inaccuracy on a treadmill. There's no inaccuracy of where exactly you stopped in maybe a sidewalk if you're running outside. It's also a very controlled environment. So every single time you do this, it's going to be the same. Now, putting this back to where I was at in the summer, I was able to run basically the entire marathon at around 140 beats a minute in Challenge Roth. And in that case, my average pace was 5 minutes. When I get really, really fit, that's what I'm able to do. I'm able to run at 140 beats a minute or less at around a 5-minute kilometer. So this tells me that right now, my heart rate, my low aerobic capacity is not super finely tuned. And here's why that's super important. So despite a lot of people liking showing off the super, super fast stuff, the 400 meters on the track, the 1 kilometer repeats, even at a sprint distance race that you are going crazy fast at like an hour-long sprint distance race, it's still more than 90% an aerobic effort. A low kind of like accessing your aerobic capacity and not strength, not speed, not greasy fast stuff. You have to have a huge base of aerobic fitness. And that, when we start getting up to an Ironman, a half Ironman, it's basically entirely aerobic. So you want your aerobic capacity to be really finely tuned. Never mind being able to go fast at a top end, you want your low end to be able to go fast. And that's what's going to be able to give you longevity in a race so you don't break down. If you can just stay at an aerobic capacity at a very low level heart rate, but go faster at it, that's how you do better in triathlon. Now, how we use this test is you start doing a lot of low heart rate training, particularly in the off season and the base building season. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, that means October, November, December, doing a lot of low heart rate training, getting that low heart rate really nice and strong. And what's gonna happen is those times in the run are gonna come down, you're gonna get faster at the same heart rate, and your power at the same heart rate is going to start going up. So all of a sudden, at the same effort levels, you're getting a lot faster. And that's when you can start layering in little bits of speed. Talking with my coach, who also does some consulting for us on Team Trainiac, Dr. Dan Plews, he says to me that right now, basically until we get this sorted and I can get closer to those paces that I did in the summer, we're just gonna focus on nothing but low heart rate training. So what you're doing is if you're really focusing on this stuff, you can do this as frequently as every couple of weeks and see how you're progressing. If you just want to check in, you can do it as infrequently as every 2 to 3 months. And it's going to give you a barometer that is like an exact measure of how fit you are at your nice low level aerobic capacity, which makes a big difference in how you do in a race. And this is how you can measure it exactly without thinking, oh, well, you know, I was kind of able to hold this sort of pace and it felt like this. Like, no, bang on. Here's what you can do to measure this yourself. Forget about all the gizmos and the gadgets and the training stress scores and the critical training load and where you're at. Some number in a piece of software isn't going to tell you how you perform. Performance is going to tell you how you perform. So there you go, Trainiacs. That's it. That's what I've got to work on right now. That's what I would encourage a lot of you to work on right now and start doing that test right now so that you can give yourself a starting point and you can track how you're going to do throughout the year. And when things start getting demotivating, when you're not sure if you're on the right track, you can check back in to this test, see how you're doing, and actually get a measure of how it's going. So go do that, check it out. And if you are a new triathlete and this is your first time actually watching our channel, hit the subscribe button below. We come out with videos every single week that help people train for triathlon in time-efficient ways, eliminating a bunch of the noise out there. Later, Trainiacs.